I will be the first person to tell you how amazing K-dramas are. In fact, I will give you a whole list of recommendations because I absolutely love watching K-dramas, but I often find myself at a crossroad when I watch some of them and I just see how they portray Africans or African culture. The thing is, I really don't understand why South Koreans are so obsessed with saving Africans in K-dramas. And this is really nothing new because Western countries have been doing this for ages, for years. But it's 2024. We are living in a globalized world right now, in a world where you can literally get any information of any place. You can get to know about how people in a certain deep remote place in Africa are living just from the internet. So there's really no excuse to be purporting stereotypes. And the K-drama that has actually made me make this video because it really irritated me is Dr. Slump, which is very much a recent series. And in one of the episodes, the opening episodes, they show that the doctor became famous because he was doing some voluntary work, and they show the pictures of black babies. The same storytelling is in a K-drama called Shooting Star, where the idol goes to Africa and even falls in love with an African boy, buys him shoes. I mean, you think African children don't have access to shoes? If you go to an African village, a lot of children don't wear shoes, not because they don't have shoes, but because they just like playing on grass, because it's much more fun to be walking around without shoes, to be playing on the mud without shoes. And also, you don't want your shoes to get dirty. You know what's so interesting is that for a very long time, Africans were depicted to be poor, to be savages, because they were not wearing shoes. And then right now, there's this trend where it's like, oh, remove your shoes, step on the grass, it's grounding, it's gonna make you connect with the universe. So like, yeah, we've been doing that as Africans for ages naturally, and you thought that you bringing your shoes is going to help us. Now we can buy shoes. I guess this is a case of people just being stuck in their own worldviews, that they think that the way they see the world should be how everyone else should see the world. And that's why a lot of these people keep portraying these pictures and images of Africa, trying to make Africa seem pitiful. Oh my god, so they can just come and swoop in and save Africans. Oh, poor Africans, they can't afford shoes. Oh, obviously a South Korean idol or doctor should come save them, because of course Africans don't have doctors. In the K-drama Strong Girl Namsoon, there was a scene where the grandmother was talking about the apparent wealth of her daughter and how her daughter traveled to Nairobi, Kenya. At least here they actually used the name of a city and not Africa. And apparently there was an explosion, and then they realized, oh, there is oil, and that is how her daughter became rich. And again, it's the same old story that, oh my god, the Kenyans, the Africans didn't know that they had oil, and then I just came and wow, I discovered the oil and here I am, I became rich. I honestly find it so funny. Someone actually sat down, wrote this, several people went through the script, there was a cold reading with the actors, they read it, and no one was like, guys, I mean, if you just do a little search about Africa, you would know that Africa, first of all, is a continent. Why not include the names of African countries if you're going to mention Africa in part of your storytelling? This kind of storytelling actually leaves me at a paradox, because I of course enjoy how these K-dramas have approached storytelling. I think this is largely because a lot of these shows are actually written by women, and you can feel the humanity in the storytelling, because of course as women we have a very great way of looking at the world, and that is something that is very much appealing to K-dramas. But this kind of ignorance when it comes to my culture, my continent, is what really makes me question, should I continue supporting, art that absolutely does not have respect for other people that they would consider to be inferior? Because this idea of always trying to save Africans, it's because a lot of these South Koreans who are writing these shows, or maybe this is a sentiment in South Korea, because art is often a mirror of society. It's a connotation and undertone that they think that Africans are much inferior to South Koreans. And obviously if you still think like that in 2024, I think your subscription to Earth is expired. While watching a Taiwan class, I was actually very surprised. The scene where the foreigner, who was the black guy, was actually refused entry into a club because apparently they don't allow Africans and people from the Middle East to go into clubs in South Korea. And it's just such things that really make me wonder about the South Korean culture in general, because it just looks like the people are just so backward in their thinking. And I guess that really checks out, because even when you hear about stories, actually real life stories, not stories in K-dramas, about cases like spy cams, and then instead of the perpetrators being punished, it's the victims, who most often are women, are actually being blamed. I'm an avid listener and watcher of Stephanie Sue's stories on her podcast and also on her channel, and oh my god, the many horrendous stories that she tells about how young girls are taken advantage of, and yet the Korean society, the South Korean society in general, ends up victim blaming these girls is just crazy. How the perpetrators end up going to jail for like only 1 year, when sometimes they've even pushed their victims to the point of taking their own lives. Hearing such real stories tells you so much about the culture of a community, the culture of a country. There's also a lot of stories about bullying, like really bad bullying, to the point again that children are taking their own lives. It's also the case of how South Korean netizens bully, cyber-bully idols that are purported to have done something wrong, to the point of these stars actually taking their own lives. And when you hear such stories and then you see how they're really trying to portray Africa as this continent that is constantly needing to be saved, it just tells you about the culture of a people. They are so spiritually malnourished that maybe the only way they feel good about themselves is trying to save the other people they deem to be inferior. But why would you really care about Africa when clearly you have so many things that you should be dealing with? There are also poor people in South Korea that need to be saved. And in spite of these instances of ignorance in these K-dramas, I would still recommend them, because again, I think they really do great when it comes to storytelling. They have just mastered the art of emotional appeal, their stories, and making stories very human. You know, when you watch a K-drama, it doesn't feel like another world. It just feels like you've been invited into somebody else's world and you're just watching them go through life. You feel very connected with the kind of stories they're telling. I mean, with the Dr. Slump, showing the struggles of the protagonists when they've actually gotten into the workplace, when they were overachievers in school, I really relate with, because I have gone through burnout. And of course, that experience is very different when you have always been known to be an overachiever, and then all of a sudden you're finding yourself, you know, being in a place where you cannot continue overachieving. The way people treat you is very different, and you realize that, oh, people had this god complex about you, and when you try to show how you actually need them, how weak you are, they want to run away from you. This is one of the reasons why I really like K-dramas, is how they just make you feel human, how they make you see yourself in these stories. But that does not negate the ignorance that they purport about Africa in their stories. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be blind and be like, oh my god, they are so perfect. The reason why we're always interacting with art, watching or listening, it's so that we can look at ourselves as human beings and look at the kind of societies we're creating with the art that we're actually distributing. That's why I believe that it's really important for us to talk about not just the positive things. I've spoken before about why people should watch K-dramas, why the South Korean industry is actually better than Hollywood, but it's also important to point out the things that might be misleading so that we can create a balanced world.